Patrick Reeves chose the church courtyard because it was sacred ground. The donors stood in tailored suits beneath stained glass light when he pointed at the gardener, a quiet woman with soil on her gloves, and accused her of sabotaging the floral display. He did not lower his voice. He said incompetence did not belong near generosity. Laughter flickered, cameras tilted. The gardener bowed her head and apologized. No one noticed the ring she wore beneath the dirt. No one realized the foundation bearing his name answered to hers. Patrick believed he was protecting his reputation. He was in fact documenting his own ruin. If you believe dignity matters more than noise, stay with this story. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from and your local time. It's always powerful to see justice witnessed across different corners of the world. And if stories about quiet strength and accountability resonate with you, consider subscribing. Now let's begin. Savannah Reeves had never been a woman who raised her voice to prove a point. She preferred numbers. Numbers did not flinch. They did not charm. They did not improvise when cornered. They told the truth eventually to anyone patient enough to read them correctly. Reeves Capital had begun as a 2-desk operation in a rented office overlooking the Charles River in Boston. Savannah had built it from modeling municipal bond risk in her 20s to structuring multi-state infrastructure portfolios in her 30s. By 42, she owned controlling interest in a firm that quietly shaped hospitals' transit lines, renewable energy grids. Her name rarely appeared in press releases. She had negotiated that condition early. Patrick, on the other hand, understood cameras. The Reeves Foundation had been his idea, at least publicly. Scholarships for underfunded districts, veteran housing initiatives, medical research grants. His photograph often appeared beside oversized checks and grateful recipients. He had a practiced way of holding a child's shoulder when reporters leaned in. Savannah had funded the foundation. Patrick had fronted it. That arrangement had once seemed efficient. The first irregularity arrived as a rounding error. It was late, almost midnight, when Savannah reviewed the quarterly internal reports from the Foundation's Restricted Scholarship Fund. She had not intended to audit it personally. She trusted systems. She had designed most of them. But a line item labeled Consulting Disbursement repeated 3 times in amounts that avoided secondary review thresholds. $94, $750. $97, $200. $92, $880. Each categorized under program strategy alignment. Savannah stared at the figures without expression. Restricted scholarship funds were not flexible. Donors designated them for tuition grants. Reclassification required board approval and documentation. She saw neither attached. She opened the parallel bank statement. The transfers had cleared. To an entity she did not immediately recognize, Horizon Ridge Consulting, LLC. Savannah leaned back in her chair. She did not feel anger, not yet. What she felt was curiosity sharpened by discipline. She accessed the Foundation's internal email server and searched for Horizon Ridge. 2 results. 1 calendar invitation between Patrick and Avi Cole. 1 deleted thread that had been archived, not erased, a distinction most people overlooked. Savannah restored the thread. The emails were brief. Let's keep this clean. Reclassification will be handled internally. Sav doesn't need granular detail. Savannah read the last line twice. She did not slam her laptop closed. She did not call Patrick. Instead, she retrieved a leather-bound notebook from the top drawer of her desk. It was unmarked, thick with cream pages. She wrote, Horizon Ridge Consulting, LLC, 3 transfers, see amounts, restricted scholarship funds, email language concealment tone, V. Cole. She underlined nothing. She added no adjectives. In the kitchen downstairs, Patrick was on a late call. His voice carried faintly upward, warm and confident. Absolutely, Judge Caldwell has been supportive of the Foundation's initiatives, he was saying. We're committed to transparency. Savannah closed her eyes briefly at the word. Transparency was measurable. It either existed or it did not. She descended the stairs quietly. Patrick ended the call as she entered. "You're still working?" he asked, smiling. "I was reviewing the scholarship allocations," she replied evenly. "God, Savannah." He laughed lightly. "You don't have to micromanage everything." That's why we hired Ronald. Ronald Pierce, the foundation's accountant, methodical, deferential, cautious. "I'm not micromanaging," Savannah said. "Just reading." Patrick poured himself mineral water. "You should sleep. You've been pushing too hard lately." The statement was casual, almost tender. It landed differently. Savannah studied him, his relaxed shoulders, the absence of tension around his mouth. If he felt threatened, he did not show it. "Have you heard of Horizon Ridge Consulting?" she asked. The pause was less than half a second. "Consultants," Patrick said. "Program alignment, strategic outreach. It's normal. For restricted scholarship funds, they advised on restructuring criteria." He shrugged. "It's all compliant." Savannah nodded once. "Of course," she said. She did not challenge him. She did not request documentation. She did not mention the deleted email. Patrick kissed her temple before heading upstairs. "You worry too much," he added gently. Savannah returned to her office instead of following him. She opened the Massachusetts Business Registry database. Horizon Ridge Consulting LLC had been registered 18 months earlier. Managing member, Vanessa Cole. Savannah did not recognize the name. The registered address was a mailbox facility 20 miles outside Boston. Savannah wrote the address down. Then she accessed the foundation's bylaws. Consulting contracts above $50,000 required dual signature approval, the foundation president and the board treasurer. The treasurer's digital signature appeared on each disbursement. Savannah knew the treasurer personally. Eleanor Whitaker was meticulous to the point of rigidity. Savannah sent Eleanor a neutral message. "Can you confirm the consulting scope for Horizon Ridge related to scholarship restructuring? I'm reconciling program metrics." The reply came 20 minutes later. "I'm not familiar with Horizon Ridge." Was that under Patrick's discretionary authority? Savannah did not answer immediately. She added another note to her book. Treasurer unaware. Her breathing remained steady. She had structured her marriage like her business clear lanes of authority defined domains. Patrick oversaw public engagement and philanthropic programming. She oversaw capital allocation and long-term growth. They did not audit each other. Trust, like leverage, had been assumed. Savannah closed the registry tab and instead opened the estate's operational vendor list for their Connecticut property, a sprawling residence Patrick often used for board retreats. Landscaping contractor Greenline Groundskeeping. Temporary hires rotated through weekly. Savannah's eyes lingered. Patrick preferred to hold sensitive conversations away from corporate offices. He had once described the estate as neutral ground. Neutral, perhaps, for someone who believed no one was watching. Savannah looked at the time, 1:14 a.m. She did not wake him. She did not confront him with printed spreadsheets at the breakfast table. Instead, she drafted a quiet email to Greenline's operations manager from a new account, inquiring about short-term seasonal landscape work. Prior experience available. She attached a resume stripped of identifiers. Name Lena Carter. Availability immediate. Savannah closed the laptop only after confirming the email had been sent. She stood at the window overlooking the river. In another part of the house, Patrick slept. Savannah did not feel betrayed yet. Betrayal required certainty. What she felt was the subtle shift of weight beneath the structures she had engineered herself. She understood something most people did not collapse. Rarely begins with noise. It begins with small, deniable deviations. 3 transfers under review thresholds. A deleted email restored. A name she had never heard before. Savannah touched the edge of her notebook. If Patrick was mismanaging funds, that was one matter. If he was diverting restricted scholarships for private use, that was another. And if he believed she would never look closely, that above all interested her. Her phone vibrated softly. A reply from Greenline. Lena Carter, we need help at the Reeves estate next week. Temporary cash supplement plus hourly. Orientation Monday. Savannah read the message twice. The estate belonged to her legally. The foundation answered to her financially. The trust agreements carried her signature. But knowledge did not belong to her. Not yet. She closed the message and wrote one final line before shutting the notebook, verify before speaking. Upstairs, Patrick turned in his sleep, unaware that the quietest decision of their marriage had just been made. Savannah switched off the light. In the darkness, she was not angry. She was precise. Savannah Reeves did not rush. On Monday morning, she dressed in denim instead of tailored wool. She tied her hair into a low knot at the nape of her neck and removed the diamond studs she wore daily. The wedding ring remained, but she turned it inward so the stone faced her palm. Dirt she knew would dull its surface within hours. She parked 2 streets away from the Connecticut estate. The property stretched across 12 manicured acres, white colonial facade, slate roof, tall windows reflecting early autumn light. Savannah had chosen the architect herself 15 years earlier. She had supervised soil testing before the foundation was poured. Now she approached through the service gate. Greenline groundskeeping's truck idled near the tool shed. 3 men unloaded equipment. 1 woman stood slightly apart reviewing a clipboard. Caleb Whitmore, estate operations manager. Mid-40s, efficient, careful, loyal to structure more than to personality. Savannah had hired him after a background check revealed consistency rather than ambition. He looked at her without recognition. You, Lena, he asked. Yes. Experience private estates, seasonal installations, pruning irrigation. He handed her gloves. We've got hedge line restoration along the East Drive, and the greenhouse needs clearing. Savannah nodded. She did not look toward the main house. Not yet. The rhythm of manual labor came back faster than she expected. Trim, gather, stack, assess. She moved deliberately, not too skilled, not too slow, enough to blend. From the East Drive, she could see the circular front courtyard where vehicles arrived. By mid-morning, a black sedan pulled in. Patrick stepped out. He wore a navy blazer despite the mild weather. Madison Blake followed his executive assistant, early 30s, precise posture phone already pressed to her ear. Savannah kept her gaze lowered, but she watched reflections into the greenhouse glass. Patrick did not look toward the hedge line. He walked with the confidence of someone entering a stage he believed belonged solely to him. Madison remained half a step behind, murmuring about schedules. Audit committee call Thursday. Ronald confirmed numbers. Patrick waved a hand dismissively. It's contained. Contained. Savannah repeated the word silently. Around noon, she was assigned to clear debris inside the greenhouse. The structure stood separate from the main house, often used for private conversations, under the guise of horticultural interest. Savannah recognized the irony. Inside, broken terracotta pots and wilted arrangements littered the stone floor. She knelt and began sorting compost from refuse. Near the back wall, a metal trash bin sat partially concealed behind a rack of empty trays. Its contents were shredded paper. Not industrially shredded, torn by hand. Savannah did not immediately reach for it. She finished stacking tools first, then casually she pulled the bin closer. The pieces were large enough to reconstruct. She gathered a handful. Fragments of letterhead appeared. Reeves Foundation. She shifted through the pile slowly, as though clearing waste. She did not pocket anything. She only observed. Several pieces contained the same header, restricted scholarship allocation, internal reclassification. A signature block appeared on one partial sheet. Ronald Pierce. Another fragment held the words, per Patrick's instruction. Savannah placed the pieces back into the bin exactly as she had found them. Her pulse did not quicken. Footsteps approached. She resumed sweeping. Patrick entered the greenhouse alone. He did not notice her at first. He spoke into his phone in a lower tone than usual. No, Vanessa, it won't trace back if we stagger it. The LLC absorbs operational cost, then disperses. Savannah doesn't review foundation minutiae anymore. Savannah continued sweeping. Yes, Judge Caldwell's office confirmed no additional inquiry unless flagged. And it won't be flagged. He turned slightly and saw her. His expression shifted not to recognition, but to irritation. "You," he said sharply. "This place is a mess." She lowered her eyes. "Yes, sir. Those installations were for donors last quarter. They shouldn't look neglected. I'll correct it." He studied her for a moment longer than necessary. "There's a standard here," he said. "If you can't maintain it, Caleb can find someone who can." Savannah nodded. "I understand." Patrick's phone buzzed again. He turned away, resuming his call as he exited. Savannah waited until his footsteps faded before straightening. He had not recognized her voice, or perhaps he had never listened closely enough to distinguish it. She resumed sorting debris, but now her movements were more intentional. She noted the time mentally, 12:17 p.m. She would later write it down. Outside, Madison crossed the courtyard with a folder tucked under her arm. Savannah shifted positions so she could see through the greenhouse glass without appearing to stare. Madison entered the main house and returned 15 minutes later with Ronald Pierce. Ronald looked uncomfortable. They walked toward the side terrace, partially shielded by ivy. Savannah carried a crate of empty pots toward the compost area, adjusting her path to pass within earshot without breaking stride. "I signed, based on what you told me," Ronald was saying quietly. "And what I told you remains accurate," Madison replied. "Program alignment expenses. But Eleanor asked about Eleanor isn't in operations." There was a pause. Ronald lowered his voice further. "If Savannah reviews this personally—" "She won't," Madison said. "Patrick's made that clear." Savannah kept walking. The crate felt heavier than it was. By late afternoon, the crew dispersed for a break. Savannah remained behind under the pretense of reorganizing tools. She removed her notebook from the inner lining of her work jacket, a slim version she had prepared for the estate. She wrote 12:17 p.m. Patrick call W/Vanessa Restager transfers no trace. Mention Judge Caldwell, no inquiry unless flagged. Statement Savannah doesn't review foundation minutiae anymore. Ronald concerned Ari Eleanor question. Madison dismissive. She paused. Then added, greenhouse bin torn docks, restricted scholarship allocation, internal reclassification. Ronald's signature. Phrase per Patrick's instruction. She closed the notebook as footsteps approached. Caleb leaned against the doorway. "You work quiet," he observed. "Yes, that's good. Less drama." She nodded. Patrick's particular, Caleb added. "Don't take it personal." Savannah met his eyes briefly. "I don't." He seemed satisfied. As evening approached, vehicles returned. One unfamiliar silver coupe entered through the front drive. A woman stepped out. Mid-30s. Dark hair, tailored cream coat heels, unsuited for gravel. Vanessa Cole. Savannah recognized her from the registry photo. Vanessa did not look like a consultant. She looked like someone accustomed to private entrances. Patrick greeted her, not at the door, but halfway down the steps. Too informal for professional distance. Savannah turned her back and adjusted irrigation valves, listening without appearing to. "I told you to be discreet," Vanessa murmured. "I am," Patrick replied. "Everything's under control. And your wife? She's preoccupied." Savannah adjusted the water flow with steady hands. Vanessa laughed softly. Men always think that. Savannah did not react. She watched as they entered the house together. The sun lowered behind the tree line, casting long shadows across the lawn Savannah had once overseen personally. Now she stood in soil she owned, unrecognized. The estate felt different viewed from ground level. Less grand, more exposed. When the workday ended, Savannah returned the gloves and thanked Caleb. "You coming back tomorrow?" he asked. "If needed, we'll need you." She drove away without looking back at the house in her rearview mirror. At home that night, Patrick was already seated at the dining table, scrolling through his phone. "How was your day?" he asked casually. Productive, Savannah replied. Good. He did not ask for details. He did not notice the faint dirt beneath her nails. Savannah poured herself water and sat across from him. She studied the man she had built an empire beside. He smiled at something on his screen. She wondered if it was Vanessa. Later, alone in her office, she transferred the notes from her field notebook into the primary leather ledger. Her handwriting remained steady. She did not speculate. She documented. Then she wrote one final line beneath the day's entry: he believes distance equals ignorance. Savannah closed the book. In another part of the house, Patrick laughed softly at a message notification. He still believed the estate was neutral ground. He did not yet understand neutral ground only exists when no one is mapping it. Savannah had begun mapping. Quietly. By the fourth day, Savannah understood the estate's new rhythm better than the staff did. Mornings were logistical deliveries, maintenance routine order. Afternoons belonged to private conversations. Evenings concealed what daylight tried to soften. She arrived earlier than required. The greenhouse still held the faint scent of damp soil and citrus cleaner. The torn documents in the metal bin had not been removed. That told her something important. No one believed the fragments were worth retrieving. Savannah began reconstructing them during her assigned clearing tasks, not by stealing, not by removing evidence, but by memorizing structure. She placed pieces together briefly on an overturned crate, noting sequence font alignment, signature placement. The header confirmed it. Restricted scholarship allocation, internal reclassification memo. Below that partial language, temporary strategic liquidity adjustment. Bridge disbursement to Horizon Ridge. Restoration, post-quarter close. Savannah did not need the full paragraph to understand intent. Restricted funds had been diverted under the guise of short-term adjustment. Restoration implied repayment later. But repayment had not occurred. She reassembled Ronald Pierce's signature from 3 torn strips. The signature was steady, which meant Ronald had not signed under duress in that moment. He had believed the narrative he was given. Savannah replaced the fragments exactly as she had found them. She would not compromise admissibility by mishandling discarded material. If it remained accessible, it could later be subpoenaed intact. Precision required restraint. Mid-morning, Caleb approached with a printed schedule. Patrick's hosting a small board dinner tonight, he said. We need the courtyard immaculate. Savannah nodded. Keep out of sight once guests arrive, Caleb added. He doesn't like visible staff during receptions. She understood. Visibility implied accountability. By noon, a catering van arrived. Savannah trimmed the boxwood lining the stone pathway while observing through peripheral vision. Madison Blake stepped outside with her phone pressed against her shoulder, irritation tightening her posture. I told you the numbers are reconciled, she said sharply. No, Eleanor doesn't need additional breakdowns. It's strategic expense. Savannah clipped a stray branch and listened. If she insists, Patrick will handle it. Madison ended the call and exhaled in frustration. She did not see Savannah watching from beneath lowered lashes. Later, Ronald Pierce arrived, carrying a leather briefcase. He moved differently than before, less assured, shoulders drawn inward. Patrick met him in the side study, but the French doors were slightly ajar. Savannah carried a watering can across the courtyard at a measured pace. It's not the amount, Ronald was saying quietly. It's the classification. It's temporary, Patrick replied. The foundation's liquidity fluctuates. You know that. Restricted funds are restricted. Patrick's tone hardened. You signed the memo, based on your assurance, and my assurance stands. After the gala we replenish. No one is harmed. There was a pause. Ronald spoke again more cautiously. Eleanor mentioned Savannah might review Q4 directly. Savannah slowed her steps without stopping. Patrick gave a short laugh. She hasn't touched foundation oversight in years. She's focused on capital markets. Leave Savannah to me. The confidence in his voice carried no tremor. Savannah continued walking. Leave Savannah to me. The phrase did not sting. It clarified. By late afternoon, the silver coupe returned. Vanessa Cole stepped out with practiced ease, her expression composed but alert. Savannah worked near the hydrangeas along the terrace, close enough to hear the low exchange. "You're cutting this tight," Vanessa murmured. "We're within acceptable exposure," Patrick answered. "And if audit expands, it won't. You sound certain I am." Savannah adjusted soil around the base of a plant, her movements slow. Vanessa lowered her voice further, and Savannah Patrick's response came without hesitation. "She trusts me." The word hung in the air like humidity before a storm. Savannah pressed the soil flat. Trust, she thought, was not blindness. It was a variable. As dusk approached, guests began arriving for the dinner. Luxury sedans lined the circular drive. Laughter carried across the courtyard. Savannah retreated toward the service path as instructed. But before she could fully withdraw, Patrick stepped outside to inspect the setup. He scanned the arrangements critically. His gaze landed on her. "You," he said sharply. "Those uplights are misaligned." Savannah followed his line of sight. The lighting was symmetrical. "They appear even," she said quietly. He stepped closer. "Appearances matter," he replied, his voice edged for the benefit of two approaching board members. "If you can't manage symmetry, you shouldn't be here." The board members exchanged glances. Savannah lowered her eyes. "I'll correct it." Patrick did not lower his volume. "This foundation stands for excellence. That includes landscaping." A subtle ripple of discomfort passed through the observers. Savannah adjusted the light fixture half an inch. "There," she said. Patrick turned away dismissively. She felt the eyes of the board members linger briefly before they followed him inside. Humiliation, when delivered publicly, was meant to establish hierarchy. Savannah understood that instinct. She had seen executives use it to intimidate subordinates. Patrick believed he was reinforcing authority. He did not realize authority derived from documentation, not decibels. When the guests moved indoors, Savannah returned to the greenhouse under cover of dimming light. She removed her smaller notebook. Entry: Ronald expresses concern, re-restricted classification. Patrick. After the gala, we replenish. Patrick. She trusts me. Public correction, re-uplights, unnecessary escalation. Witnesses present. She paused, then added, pattern increasing reliance on certainty over verification. A sudden noise interrupted her thoughts, the sound of raised voices from the main house. Savannah moved closer to the greenhouse doors, remaining unseen. "We can't delay the wire again," Vanessa was saying. "We're not delaying," Patrick responded. "We're staging. And if she reviews before, she won't." There was silence. Vanessa spoke more softly. "You're underestimating her." Patrick exhaled sharply. "Savannah is brilliant at markets." "Not at this." Savannah closed her eyes briefly. "Not at this." The dismissal was almost clinical. It revealed more than anger would have. The door shut. Footsteps receded. Savannah stepped back into the greenhouse shadows. The estate lights flickered on across the lawn, illuminating a facade built on reputation. Inside, wine glasses clinked. Savannah stood alone among abandoned pots and torn documents. She did not feel diminished. She felt calibrated. That night, after returning home, she waited until Patrick slept before accessing the shared trust documentation stored in their secure server. She reviewed amendment history. One recent modification caught her attention. A clause adjusting discretionary authority over foundation liquidity in the event of executive incapacitation. Savannah read the language twice. The threshold for incapacitation was vaguely defined: medical certification by 2 professionals. And the initiating request could be submitted by a spouse. Savannah closed the file slowly. Diversion of funds was one matter. Preparation to neutralize her authority was another. She wrote in her ledger, "Trust Amendment Potential Leverage Mechanism, Monitor." Upstairs, Patrick shifted in his sleep, unaware that his certainty had already been logged, dated, and contextualized. Savannah closed the ledger and rested her palm over its cover. She did not confront him. She did not accuse. She understood something he did not. Arrogance is loudest just before exposure. And exposure, when structured carefully, requires no raised voice at all. Savannah did not return to the estate the following morning. Absence, when timed carefully, created space for analysis. Instead, she drove to Boston before sunrise and parked 3 blocks away from a glass and steel building overlooking the harbor. The sign outside read Hanover National Bank Private Wealth Division. Daniel Cho preferred early meetings. He had once overseen compliance protocols for Reeves Capital before transferring into private banking. Methodical, discreet, almost allergic to improvisation, Daniel had earned Savannah's respect the way all trustworthy professionals did, by refusing shortcuts. He greeted her without surprise. "You don't schedule without purpose," he said, motioning her into a conference room. Savannah placed a slim folder on the table. "I need to understand reporting exposure between a nonprofit foundation and a consulting LLC receiving staggered transfers under $100,000. Daniel did not react to the phrasing. "Are we speaking hypothetically?" he asked. "For now." He folded his hands. "If the LLC is domestic and properly registered, transfers under reporting thresholds won't trigger automatic review. But pattern analysis could, especially if funds originate from restricted categories. And if the restricted designation is reclassified internally, that's riskier," Daniel replied. "Documentation must justify it. Otherwise, it's misrepresentation." Savannah slid a sheet of paper toward him. On it, she had written the transfer dates and amounts from memory. Daniel studied them. 3 within 1 quarter, he observed. Similar amounts, same recipient. He looked up. "Is this connected to you personally?" Savannah held his gaze. "It is connected to fiduciary responsibility?" Daniel nodded once. "If you pursue this, formally preserve everything. Don't remove documents. Don't access accounts outside your authorization scope. And don't confront anyone until you've structured the review." "I won't." He hesitated. "If there's diversion of restricted funds, regulators care. So do donors." Savannah closed the folder. "I'm aware." She did not explain that the donors in question were families who believed their children's tuition checks were protected by covenant language. She did not need to. By mid-morning, Savannah drove to a separate address, an unremarkable brick building housing the Massachusetts Business Registry office. She could have accessed all information digitally, but physical presence offered perspective. Horizon Ridge Consulting LLC's filing documents were retrieved. Managing member Vanessa Cole. Registered agent Madison Blake. Savannah read that line twice. Madison Blake, Patrick's assistant. The mailing address corresponded to the same mailbox facility she had noted earlier. No listed employees, no publicly disclosed contracts. She requested copies. When she returned to her car, she did not start the engine immediately. Madison's involvement tightened the structure. This was no isolated consultant arrangement. This was coordinated. That afternoon, Savannah returned to the estate in Connecticut as Lena Carter. Caleb handed her pruning shears. "You missed the excitement yesterday," he said casually. "What excitement? Board dinner ran late." Patrick wasn't thrilled with the turnout. Savannah nodded. "He's particular," Caleb added. "I've noticed." Caleb studied her briefly. "You don't rattle easy." "No." He seemed almost amused. As Savannah moved along the western fence line, Madison's voice drifted from the veranda. "No, we can't delay the 4th transfer," she was saying into her phone. "If we wait until Q1, Eleanor might request a line-item audit." Savannah adjusted the irrigation system, keeping her posture neutral. Yes, Vanessa Patrick approved it. Vanessa's name no longer startled her. Pattern recognition had replaced surprise. Later that afternoon, Savannah carried tools toward the storage shed and encountered Ronald Pierce alone. He looked pale. "Is everything all right?" she asked quietly, maintaining the persona. Ronald hesitated, perhaps unused to staff addressing him directly. "Fine," he replied automatically. She studied him. "You look like someone who signed something he didn't like." The words were measured almost observational. Ronald stiffened. "I'm sorry, paperwork," Savannah clarified. "My last employer rushed approvals. It never ended well." Ronald's eyes narrowed slightly. "Are you suggesting something I'm suggesting signatures last longer than conversations?" She did not elaborate. She lifted the crate and walked past him. Behind her, she sensed his stillness. Sometimes doubt required only a mirror. As evening approached, Patrick arrived unexpectedly early. He walked the grounds alone, hands in his pockets, scanning the property as if measuring control. He stopped when he saw Savannah near the East Drive. "You again," he said. "Yes, sir." He studied her face more closely this time. There was something in his expression, not recognition, but irritation sharpened by proximity. "What's your name?" he asked abruptly. "Lena. Last name Carter." He nodded slowly. "You've been here several days?" "Yes." "You keep to yourself." "I work." Patrick's jaw tightened slightly. "Good," he said. "That's what you're paid for." Savannah inclined her head. As he turned away, his phone rang. He answered without checking the caller ID. "Vanessa," he said, his tone shifting. Savannah kept trimming hedges. "No, Daniel Cho won't flag anything. He doesn't have visibility into Foundation internals." Savannah's hand paused mid-cut. Daniel Cho. Patrick did not know Savannah had already met with him. "Yes," Madison confirmed, "the trust amendment is clean," Patrick continued. "If Savannah becomes erratic, we have protective measures." Erratic. Savannah resumed trimming. Patrick ended the call and walked toward the house. She waited until he disappeared before writing a single word in her small notebook, "Trust leverage acknowledged." That night at home, Patrick poured 2 glasses of wine. "You've seemed distant," he remarked casually. "Have I?" Savannah asked. "A little. I've been reviewing portfolio exposure." He smiled faintly. "You always review something." "And you?" she asked lightly. "How's the Foundation thriving?" He said it without hesitation. Savannah lifted her glass but did not drink. "Good," she said. Later, when Patrick showered, Savannah accessed the Foundation's internal accounting dashboard from her secure credentials he had assumed she no longer used. She examined pending transfers. One new entry had been scheduled for the following week, $96,500 Horizon Ridge Consulting LLC. Classification Strategic Program Realignment. Savannah documented the timestamp. Then she checked donor agreements for the scholarship fund. Several included clawback provisions in cases of misuse. Legal exposure widened. She closed the dashboard and opened the trust amendment again. The incapacitation clause required 2 physicians and board affirmation. Patrick had positioned himself to initiate both. Savannah leaned back in her chair. Diversion of funds, coordination with assistant, manipulation of accountant, contingency plan to neutralize her authority. The structure was no longer theoretical. It was layered, and layered structures collapsed more dramatically. Savannah wrote in her ledger, "Next steps: engage legal counsel discreetly. Preserve electronic correspondence. Identify full flow of funds beyond LLC." She paused, then added, "Do not confront prematurely." Upstairs, Patrick hummed softly while dressing. He believed momentum was on his side. He believed certainty insulated him. Savannah closed the ledger and extinguished the desk lamp. In darkness, strategy clarified. She did not need to expose him publicly yet. She needed one more thing. Proof not only of diversion, but of intent. Intent rarely announces itself. It leaks in tone and timing in the confidence of those who believe they have already calculated every variable. Savannah returned to the estate on Thursday with that understanding settled firmly in her mind. The air had shifted cooler, edged with the first suggestion of autumn. Fallen leaves gathered along the stone path leading to the side terrace where Patrick preferred to host private meetings under the guise of enjoying the grounds. Savannah was assigned to clear the koi pond near the rear garden. From that position, she could see the terrace through a lattice of ivy without being easily observed. At 11:06 a.m., Vanessa Cole arrived. She wore a charcoal coat and carried a slim leather portfolio. She did not wait to be announced. Patrick met her halfway down the terrace steps too quickly for coincidence. Their body language was familiar now, less guarded, more synchronized. Savannah knelt by the pond and began removing leaves from the water's surface. The conversation drifted in fragments. "We can't let Ronald hesitate again," Vanessa was saying. "If he starts asking for written confirmation, he won't." Patrick interrupted. "Madison's managing him, and the 4th transfer scheduled." Vanessa's voice lowered. "And after that," Patrick leaned closer. "After that, we move the funds into the development property under Horizon Ridge. It becomes operational capital. That property isn't foundation-related. It doesn't need to be." Savannah's hand stilled in the water. "Operational capital. Not temporary liquidity. Permanent conversion." "You're certain the audit won't expand?" Vanessa pressed. Patrick exhaled slowly. "Judge Caldwell won't initiate review without cause. And there won't be cause unless Savannah reviews." Patrick's tone sharpened slightly. "She's occupied with international acquisitions. She hasn't examined foundation details in years." Savannah resumed skimming the water's surface, each movement measured. Vanessa studied him. "You're underestimating her." Patrick smiled faintly. "You give her too much credit." Silence followed. Then Vanessa said something quieter, almost hesitant. "And if she doesn't stay distracted," Patrick's answer came without pause, "then we accelerate the trust clause." Savannah did not look up. Vanessa shifted. "You're serious. I drafted it for a reason. And you think you can establish instability?" Patrick's voice dropped. "She's been distant, overworked. We frame it as executive burnout. 2 physicians aboard review. Temporary reassignment." "Temporary," Vanessa repeated carefully. "Long enough." Savannah's breath remained steady, leaves collected against the net in her hand. Temporary reassignment, executive burnout, 2 physicians. He had not only considered the clause, he had rehearsed its application. Vanessa closed her portfolio. "I don't want this to spiral," she said. "I agreed to restructure funds, not dismantle your marriage." Patrick's expression hardened. "My marriage is already structured." Vanessa held his gaze for several seconds. "And you're sure she doesn't suspect?" Patrick looked toward the pond, scanning the grounds casually. Savannah lowered her head further, appearing absorbed in her task. "She trusts me," he said again. The repetition had begun to sound offensive. Vanessa stepped back slightly. "Just make sure we're not the ones caught off guard." They moved toward the house together. Savannah remained kneeling long after they disappeared inside. The koi circled slowly beneath the water's surface, unaware of the architecture above them shifting. Savannah wrung excess water from her gloves and walked toward the greenhouse. Inside, she retrieved her small notebook. Entry 11-6 AMP and V Terrace discussion. 4th transfer confirmed. Post-transfer plan convert funds into development property, non-foundation asset. Trust clause acceleration discussed. Language establish instability. Executive burnout. Temporary reassignment. She paused before adding, intent confirmed. This was no longer misclassification. It was premeditated displacement. Her phone vibrated softly in her pocket. A message from Daniel Cho, unusual activity flagged in foundation account. Pending wire scheduled Monday. Recommend review if authorized. Savannah read it twice. Daniel had not flagged the transfers earlier because they had remained beneath threshold scrutiny. But cumulative activity had begun forming a visible pattern. The system had noticed. She typed a brief reply. Do not intervene yet. Continue monitoring. She closed the phone and slid it back into her pocket. Later that afternoon, Ronald Pierce arrived again. He looked worse than before, dark circles beneath his eyes, ties slightly misaligned. Savannah found him alone near the side entry. You don't look well, she said quietly. He glanced at her, distracted. Long week, paperwork. He hesitated. You ask a lot of questions for a gardener. Savannah held his gaze steadily. Not questions, observations. Ronald exhaled. Some things are above my pay grade. Signatures aren't, she replied. His eyes flickered. I follow directives. And if directives conflict with donor intent, Ronald swallowed. You don't know what you're implying. Savannah tilted her head slightly. No, she said calmly. But you do. She walked away before he could respond. That evening, Patrick returned home later than usual. Savannah was seated at the dining table with a stack of financial reports. You're working again, he observed. Yes. He poured himself water. The foundation's in excellent shape, he added casually. Record fundraising projections. That's good, Savannah replied. You don't need to audit everything personally. I prefer clarity. Patrick smiled faintly. Clarity is relative. Savannah looked at him steadily, not in accounting. A flicker passed through his expression, quick, almost imperceptible. He recovered easily. You've always been intense, he said. It's admirable. She did not respond. After dinner, Patrick retreated to his study for a call. Savannah remained seated, reviewing her notes from the estate. Fourth transfer scheduled Monday. Conversion to development property immediately after. Trust clause contingency in parallel. She opened her primary ledger and transcribed the day's observations with exact timestamps. Then she added a new section heading Legal Exposure. Under it she wrote, Misuse of restricted scholarship funds. Conspiracy to convert nonprofit assets for private development. Planned invocation of incapacitation clause under false pretenses. She closed the ledger slowly. Patrick re-entered the room. You're up late, he said. So are you. Vanessa sends her regards. The name was offered casually. Savannah met his eyes. She seems invested, she said evenly. She's competent. In what capacity? Patrick smiled. Consulting. Savannah held his gaze 1 second longer than necessary. I see. He kissed her lightly on the forehead. You worry too much. Savannah did not flinch. When he left the room, she opened her phone and drafted a single email. To Rebecca Sloan, subject confidential consultation request. I need to discuss potential breach of fiduciary duty involving nonprofit fund diversion and related trust manipulation. Discretion required. She did not send it immediately. Instead, she reread it once. Then she pressed send. Upstairs, Patrick moved about comfortably unaware that the architecture he believed he controlled had already been diagram dated and escalated beyond his reach. Savannah closed her laptop and turned off the lights. In the darkness, she felt no triumph, only alignment. He had moved from negligence to intent. And intent, once documented, no longer belonged to him. It belonged to the record. The gala at St. Bartholomew's Church had been scheduled months in advance. It was designed to celebrate the Reeves Foundation's commitment to educational equity. Scholarship recipients would stand beside donors. Cameras would capture gratitude. Patrick would speak about opportunity. Savannah had approved the budget allocation for the event before she ever suspected diversion. Now she stood on the church courtyard's outer edge, in a faded work jacket, a coil of extension cord at her feet. The limestone facade of the church glowed in late afternoon light. Stained glass reflected fractured color across the stone steps. Volunteers arranged floral displays donated by local businesses. The air carried the scent of polished wood and autumn leaves. Patrick preferred sacred spaces for public virtue. It made contradiction harder to imagine. Savannah adjusted the final uplight near the foundation banner. The logo blue serif lettering against white canvas fluttered in the breeze. Madison Blake paced nearby with a clipboard issuing quick instructions. Flowers centered. Step and repeat aligned. Media check-in to the right. She stopped short when she saw Savannah. You're blocking the sight line, Madison said curtly. Savannah stepped back without comment. Guests began arriving at 6 precisely. Donors in tailored coats, city officials, a local news crew. Ronald Pierce stood near the entrance, smile, strained but present. Eleanor Whitaker, the foundation treasurer, arrived shortly after. She greeted Patrick warmly, unaware of the quiet fractures beneath the surface. Vanessa Cole entered 10 minutes later. She wore deep green silk and carried herself with practiced composure. She did not stand beside Patrick at first. She blended into a cluster of board members, but her eyes tracked him. Savannah noted the proximity pattern. When Patrick took the podium inside the courtyard, applause rose immediately. He looked confident, controlled, articulate. Tonight he began, "We celebrate integrity in action." Savannah stood at the periphery, hands folded loosely before her. "Integrity in action," Patrick continued. "Our foundation ensures every dollar entrusted to us reaches the students who need it most." Eleanor nodded approvingly. Donors leaned in. Savannah's gaze shifted briefly toward Ronald. He did not meet anyone's eyes. "Transparency," Patrick said, "is the cornerstone of our mission." A faint breeze lifted the banner behind him. Savannah observed the crowd carefully. Faces open, expectant, trusting. Trust, she thought again, was measurable. Patrick concluded his speech to applause. As guests moved toward the reception tables, Savannah stepped forward to adjust a slightly tilted floral arrangement near the walkway. It was minor, barely noticeable. Patrick noticed. He approached quickly, irritation already forming. "What are you doing?" he demanded, his voice not lowered. "Correcting the alignment," Savannah replied quietly. In front of donors, his tone sharpened deliberately. A few guests turned. Savannah remained still. The arrangement was slightly off-center. Patrick gestured toward it dismissively. "It was fine. You don't improvise at events like this. I was asked to maintain presentation." Madison approached, sensing tension. Patrick did not reduce his volume. "This foundation stands for precision. If staff can't follow instructions, they shouldn't be here." The words carried across the courtyard. Conversations dimmed. Savannah lowered her gaze. "I apologize." Patrick stepped closer, positioning himself so the interaction became visible to those nearest. "You apologize by listening," he said, "not by correcting things you don't understand." Silence thickened. Savannah inclined her head. "Yes, sir." A donor shifted uncomfortably. Eleanor's brow furrowed faintly. Patrick straightened, satisfied. "Handle the lighting and stay out of sight." Savannah stepped back toward the shadow of a column. The humiliation was measured intentional. Public correction reinforced hierarchy. Patrick turned away, already smiling for a photo with a scholarship recipient. Savannah did not move immediately. She observed the witnesses. Eleanor glanced once more in her direction before returning her attention to the guests. Ronald's jaw tightened visibly. Vanessa watched from across the courtyard. Her expression was unreadable. Savannah bent to gather a stray cable near the base of the podium. As she did, she heard Madison speaking in a low voice beside Patrick. "That was unnecessary," Madison murmured. Patrick shrugged. "Staff need boundaries, and optics favor authority." Savannah memorized the phrase. As the evening progressed, she repositioned lighting and replenished water pitchers discreetly. She remained present but peripheral. She noticed something else. Vanessa and Patrick avoided standing together too closely in public view. But in passing, their hands brushed once briefly intentionally. Small contact, intimate familiarity disguised as accident. Savannah filed it without emotion. Midway through the reception, Eleanor approached Savannah directly. "Are you with the grounds team?" she asked gently. "Yes, ma'am." "You did fine earlier," Eleanor said quietly. "Events can be tense." Savannah met her eyes. "Precision matters," she replied. Eleanor gave a slight nod. "Yes, it does." She walked away slowly, thoughtful. That exchange mattered more than Patrick's reprimand, because Eleanor had witnessed tone, and tone, when repeated, became pattern. As dusk deepened into night, the courtyard lights glowed warmly against the church stone. Patrick gave interviews to local reporters. "Every cent," he said confidently, "is accounted for." Savannah stood behind a pillar and listened. The irony did not sting. It clarified. When the event concluded and guests dispersed, staff began dismantling decor. Savannah carried folding chairs toward the truck. Ronald approached her unexpectedly. "You didn't deserve that," he said under his breath. It's part of the job, she replied evenly. No, he said quietly. It wasn't. He hesitated. Some things look stable from the outside, he added. They're not. Savannah studied him carefully. Stability depends on structure, she said. Ronald swallowed. Yes. He walked away before saying more. By the time the final equipment was loaded, the courtyard stood empty. Patrick remained inside the church with Eleanor and 2 board members. Vanessa waited near the side entrance. Savannah wiped her hands on a cloth and walked toward the service gate. As she passed near the vestry window, she heard Patrick's voice drifting outward. I assure you, Eleanor, everything is compliant. Eleanor responded, tone measured. I'd still like a detailed breakdown before year-end. Of course, Patrick said smoothly. Savannah stepped into the night air. The church bells tolled softly in the distance. She paused briefly beneath the banner still hanging above the courtyard. Integrity in action. She reached up and loosened the final tie securing it to the frame. Carefully, deliberately. When she returned home later that night, Patrick was in unusually good spirits. Excellent turnout, he said, loosening his tie. Strong donor confidence, I saw, Savannah replied. He studied her briefly. You didn't attend. I prefer results to speeches. He laughed lightly. You've always been that way. Savannah watched him pour himself a drink. Were there any concerns raised, she asked. Minor bookkeeping curiosity from Eleanor. Nothing substantial. He met her eyes. You trust me, don't you? The question was casual, but not entirely. Savannah held his gaze. I trust documentation, she said calmly. Patrick smiled as if amused. You're impossible. He kissed her cheek and moved upstairs. Savannah remained standing in the quiet kitchen. In her mind, the evening replayed not the humiliation, but the witnesses. Eleanor's hesitation, Ronald's tension, Vanessa's silence, Patrick's volume. Public spaces magnified behavior, and behavior repeated became evidence. She walked to her office and opened her ledger. Entry Gala St. Bartholomew S. Public reprimand. Multiple witnesses. Eleanor requested detailed breakdown. Patrick reaffirmed compliance without documentation. She paused, then wrote one final line, confidence increasing, exposure approaching. Savannah closed the book. She did not feel anger. She felt inevitability. The courtyard had been sacred ground. Patrick had chosen it for optics. He did not understand sacred spaces record everything. The Monday after the gala, the 4th transfer was scheduled for 10:00 a.m. Savannah knew the exact minute because Daniel Cho had forwarded the pending wire notification at 8:12 a.m. Flagged quietly under routine pattern monitoring. She did not cancel it, not yet. Interruption too early would alert Patrick. Instead, she drove to the estate before sunrise. The grounds were still damp with dew. A thin fog hovered low across the lawn, softening the sharp edges of the white facade. Savannah moved through the service entrance unnoticed. Caleb handed her gloves and a list. Focus on the West Arbor today, he said. Patrick's in meetings all morning. Savannah nodded. Meetings at 9:47 a.m. A black SUV arrived, not one she recognized from previous visits. A man stepped out wearing a dark overcoat despite the mild weather. He carried no briefcase, only a slim tablet tucked beneath his arm. Madison greeted him personally at the front steps. They did not shake hands. They moved inside quickly. Savannah adjusted her position near the arbor to maintain a line of sight through the tall windows of the east study. The door remained partially open. Patrick stood behind his desk. Vanessa sat to one side, posture controlled. The unfamiliar man spoke first. If the transfer clears at 10, the development acquisition can finalize by end of week, he said. Patrick nodded. Funds will route through Horizon Ridge before allocation. And the restricted designation, the man asked. Reclassified, Patrick replied. The man's tone remained neutral. And donor disclosure? Patrick's jaw tightened slightly. Managed. Savannah noted the exchange carefully. The man continued. Risk exposure increases if internal review escalates. It won't, Patrick said flatly. The man glanced briefly toward Vanessa. Confidence is not mitigation, he replied. Vanessa intervened softly. The window is narrow. If we hesitate, the property goes to another bidder. Savannah recognized the dynamic immediately. This was no longer just personal enrichment. It was investment positioning. Foundation funds converted into private development capital. The transfer notification arrived on Savannah's phone at 10:01 a.m. $96, 500 completed. She watched Patrick exhale slightly inside the study. The unfamiliar man nodded once. Then we proceed. Savannah turned away from the window and resumed trimming the arbor. Exposure had just deepened. Late morning, Madison exited the house alone. She crossed the gravel drive and stopped near a silver sedan, parked discreetly along the side road. Savannah followed at a distance, carrying a coil of hose as cover. Madison opened the passenger side window and handed a sealed envelope inside. The driver remained unseen. Savannah adjusted her path just enough to capture the vehicle's license plate number in her peripheral vision. She repeated it silently 3 times. Memory first, documentation later. The sedan pulled away. Madison returned inside without looking back. Savannah walked calmly toward the tool shed and retrieved her small notebook. Entry 10. 1 a.m. 4th transfer cleared. Meeting attendees, Patrick, Vanessa, unidentified male, dark SUV. Discussion development acquisition, post-transfer. Madison delivered sealed envelope to unknown driver. Plate K7F9, 1824. She closed the notebook and slid it into her jacket. At noon, Ronald Pierce arrived unexpectedly. His expression was drawn tension etched into his posture. Savannah found him standing alone near the fountain. They went through with it, he murmured, unaware she stood close enough to hear. With what she asked quietly. He startled slightly. Nothing. She held his gaze. Transfers don't disappear, she said. They compound. Ronald's shoulders sagged almost imperceptibly. You don't understand the pressure, he whispered. I understand signatures. He looked at her sharply. I followed directives. And if directives violate donor restriction, Ronald's jaw clenched. You're just landscaping staff. Savannah nodded slightly. Yes. She waited. Silence pressed between them. Finally, Ronald spoke again, voice low. They said it would be restored after the acquisition. And do you believe that he did not answer? Instead, he walked toward the house with slow, heavy steps. Savannah watched him go. Doubt was no longer abstract. It was visible. At 2:30 p.m., Savannah's phone vibrated again. Daniel Cho. Unusual secondary routing detected his message read, funds from Horizon Ridge partially transferred to Caldwell Development Holdings. Flagged internally, but not reported. Savannah stared at the name. Caldwell. Judge Caldwell. Not coincidence. She typed carefully. Do not escalate. Continue monitoring. She understood now why Patrick had sounded certain. If development funds flowed toward an entity associated directly or indirectly with a sitting judge's family holdings, oversight would hesitate. Not illegal on its face, but entangled. Savannah felt no anger, only clarity sharpening into structure. Late afternoon brought another unexpected arrival. Eleanor Whitaker stepped out of her car unannounced. Madison looked momentarily unsettled. Eleanor, she said, forcing a smile. We weren't expecting you. I prefer surprise, Eleanor replied calmly. Savannah observed from the hedge line. Eleanor entered the house without waiting for invitation. Through the window, Savannah saw Patrick rise from his desk. Eleanor spoke first. I requested detailed breakdowns this morning, she said. You'll have them, Patrick replied smoothly. I'd like to review current restricted allocations personally. A pause. That's unnecessary, Patrick said. Transparency was emphasized at the gala, Eleanor answered. Savannah watched the tension shift subtly in the room. Vanessa was not present this time. Madison hovered near the doorway. Patrick gestured toward a chair. Of course. We can schedule now, Eleanor said quietly. The word carried weight. Savannah did not move. Minutes passed. Ronald entered the study carrying files. His hands trembled slightly. Savannah turned away before the conversation progressed further. Intervention was approaching from another direction. She did not need to force it. When Eleanor exited an hour later, her expression remained composed but distant. She did not speak to Madison. She did not look toward the greenhouse. She drove away without lingering. Inside the house, Patrick's posture had changed. Less expansive, more rigid. Vanessa arrived shortly after Eleanor's departure. Her arrival was quicker this time. No code adjustment, no hesitation. Savannah positioned herself near the terrace again. She asked about Horizon Ridge directly. Patrick said irritation visible. And Vanessa asked. I deflected. For how long? Long enough. Vanessa crossed her arms. You're losing control of the narrative. Patrick stepped closer. I'm not losing anything. You can't keep repeating that. He exhaled sharply. If Savannah hadn't resurfaced in board discussions, Vanessa cut him off. She hasn't. Patrick stopped. Silence. Savannah felt the shift. Patrick's certainty was cracking. Not publicly, not yet, but internally. Vanessa lowered her voice. You're reacting. I'm managing. Poorly. The word landed heavier than intended. Patrick's jaw tightened. We move forward as planned. Vanessa studied him for a long moment, then accelerate. Savannah stepped back into shadow. Acceleration increased error probability. That was predictable. As dusk settled, she gathered tools and returned them to the shed. Before leaving, she removed her phone and typed a brief message to Rebecca Sloan, transfer complete. Secondary routing identified to Caldwell Development Holdings. Board member requested breakdown today. Timeline compressing. Rebecca's reply arrived minutes later. Preserve all documentation. Do not confront. Meeting tomorrow, 7 a.m. Savannah slid the phone back into her pocket. At home that night, Patrick appeared restless. You've been quiet, he observed. So have you, Savannah replied. He poured a drink without offering her one. Eleanor overstepped today, he said casually. Micromanaging. She has a fiduciary obligation, Savannah answered. He glanced at her. You sound like a lawyer. Numbers first, she said. Patrick studied her face. You haven't been reviewing foundation accounts, have you? The question was delivered lightly. Savannah held his gaze evenly. I review what requires review. He smiled thinly. Trust is important, Savannah. Yes, she agreed. It is. He turned away. Upstairs, he paced briefly before making a phone call she did not overhear. Savannah remained in her office reviewing the day's notes. Fourth transfer completed. Secondary routing to Caldwell Development Holdings. Eleanor initiated scrutiny. Vanessa advised acceleration. Pressure increasing. She wrote one final line before closing the ledger, momentum shifting. Patrick believed he was moving faster to stay ahead. He did not realize acceleration narrows margins, and narrow margins leave very little room for error. Rebecca Sloan did not waste words. She arrived at her downtown Boston office at 6:45 a.m., already reviewing a thin digital summary Savannah had sent overnight. By 7, Savannah was seated across from her in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the harbor. Rebecca specialized in fiduciary litigation, quiet disputes that rarely made headlines, but dismantled reputations when necessary. She had represented boards, minority shareholders, nonprofit trustees. She did not dramatize risk. She quantified it. You're certain about the secondary routing, Rebecca asked. Yes, Savannah replied. Daniel confirmed partial transfer from Horizon Ridge to Caldwell Development Holdings. Rebecca's expression did not change, but her pen paused slightly above the legal pad. Is Judge Caldwell directly connected to that entity? Not publicly, Savannah said. But the name alignment is notable. Rebecca nodded once. We don't assume corruption without documentation. We follow the money. Savannah inclined her head. That's why I'm here. Rebecca tapped the pad lightly. You have 3 exposure layers, she said. First, misuse of restricted nonprofit funds. Second, potential conspiracy to convert charitable assets for private development. Third, attempted invocation of trust provisions under false pretenses. Savannah did not react outwardly. Rebecca continued. You must preserve chain of custody. No unauthorized access, no removal of physical evidence. Every document you already have, secure it. Everything else obtained through formal channels. I haven't taken anything, Savannah said. Only documented. Good. Rebecca leaned back slightly. We begin with a litigation hold notice. Savannah met her eyes. That escalates. Yes, Rebecca replied evenly. But escalation is already underway. Savannah understood. Acceleration had narrowed margins. Rebecca continued outlining the structure. We issue a confidential preservation letter to the Foundation's executive office and board treasurer. That obligates retention of emails, accounting logs, physical files. Will that alert Patrick? It will, Rebecca said. But it doesn't accuse, it protects. Savannah considered that. Timing, she asked. Within 48 hours, Savannah nodded once. And forensic accounting, I'll retain an independent firm, Rebecca said. They'll reconstruct transaction flows from Foundation to LLC to secondary entities. Savannah folded her hands loosely. I want this done correctly, she said quietly. Rebecca studied her. You're prepared for consequences? Yes. Rebecca did not press further. At 8:15 a.m., Savannah left the office with a clear sequence forming. Litigation hold, forensic reconstruction, board-level inquiry, no confrontation, not yet. By mid-morning, Savannah returned to the estate as Lena Carter. The atmosphere had shifted subtly. Madison's movements were sharper. Staff communication was shorter. Ronald avoided eye contact altogether. Savannah began trimming ivy along the side facade when she heard raised voices inside the study. She's sniffing around, Patrick was saying. You're projecting, Vanessa replied. Eleanor asked for donor-level breakdowns. That's her job. It's not her job to distrust me. Vanessa's tone cooled. Distrust is triggered by pattern. Savannah paused only long enough to note cadence. Patrick exhaled audibly. Litigation hold would complicate everything. The phrase hung heavy in the air. Savannah resumed trimming. Vanessa responded more slowly. Why would there be a litigation hold? Patrick did not answer immediately. Because, Savannah? He stopped. Vanessa's silence sharpened. You think she's involved? Patrick's reply was measured, but tension threaded through it. She's been distant. That's not evidence. Patrick paced across the study floor. She's too calm. Savannah almost smiled. Calm he had once admired. Now he distrusted it. Inside, Vanessa spoke carefully. If she suspects anything, escalation would be procedural. Patrick stopped pacing. She wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Take it that far. Savannah adjusted the ladder and continued her task. He was beginning to calculate her. Too late. At noon, Rebecca's office sent the litigation hold notice via certified digital service to the Foundation's registered legal address and to Eleanor Whitaker directly. Savannah did not inform Patrick. She did not need to. At 12:37 p.m., Madison's voice rose sharply inside the house. We just received formal preservation notice, she said. Silence followed. Then Patrick's voice lower but strained. From who? Rebecca Sloan. Another pause. Savannah imagined the moment of recognition. Rebecca did not send notices without client authority. Vanessa's voice cut in, controlled but tense. She knows. Patrick's reply came quickly. She can't know everything. She knows enough to freeze documentation. Madison spoke again. What do we do? Patrick's breathing grew audible even from outside. We comply, he said finally. For now. Savannah stepped down from the ladder and moved toward the tool shed. Her phone vibrated. Rebecca notice delivered. Await response. Forensic team mobilized. Savannah typed a single reply, understood. Inside the house, the energy had shifted dramatically. Staff moved with caution. Ronald exited the study, pale, carrying a stack of files. Savannah intercepted him gently near the walkway. It started, she said softly. He stared at her. How do you know? because silence ends before accountability begins. Ronald swallowed. They're going to say it was strategic liquidity. And was it? He did not answer. Instead, he asked quietly, "Who are you?" Savannah held his gaze for a long moment. "A witness," she said. Then she walked away. By late afternoon, Patrick emerged onto the terrace alone. He stood still, staring across the lawn, as if measuring distance. Savannah observed from near the hedges. His posture had changed, less expansive, more guarded. He took out his phone and dialed. "Yes," he said quietly. "We may need to move the remaining funds sooner." A pause. No, not halt. Advance. Savannah wrote the time down mentally. Acceleration again. Inside, Vanessa paced. "You can't shift anything now," she said. "Preservation means scrutiny." Patrick's voice hardened. "I'm not waiting for them to build a case." "You already built it," Vanessa replied. Silence followed. Savannah did not need to hear more. She returned to the greenhouse and retrieved her notebook. Entry litigation hold, issued 12:37 p.m. Immediate internal recognition. Patrick discussing advancing remaining funds, post-notice. Vanessa warning against movement under preservation. She closed the notebook. Momentum had shifted. For the first time, Patrick was reacting rather than directing. That evening at home, he did not mention the notice immediately. They ate in near silence. Halfway through dinner, he set down his fork. "Did you hire Rebecca Sloan?" he asked casually. Savannah dabbed her napkin lightly. "Yes. For what purpose?" "To ensure fiduciary clarity." His jaw tightened. "You're overreacting." "Am I?" He leaned forward slightly. "You're turning routine fund management into litigation. Restricted funds are not routine," Savannah replied calmly. Patrick exhaled sharply. "You're destabilizing the foundation." "No," she said evenly. "Documentation stabilizes it." He studied her. "You don't trust me?" Savannah met his gaze. "I trust records." He stood abruptly. "This is unnecessary." "Then transparency will confirm that." He stared at her for several seconds before turning away. Upstairs, he closed his study door harder than usual. Savannah remained seated, expression unchanged. She had not raised her voice. She had not accused. She had initiated procedure. And procedure, once triggered, moved independently of emotion. In her office, she updated her ledger. Litigation hold active, subject aware, reactive behavior escalating. She closed the book gently. Patrick believed confrontation was beginning. He was mistaken. Confrontation implied argument. This was alignment. And alignment required patience. The morning after the litigation hold notice, the house felt different. Not louder, not chaotic, just compressed. Savannah noticed it first in the silence between footsteps. Doors closed more carefully. Phones were taken into separate rooms. Conversations shortened when she entered. Patrick did not mention the notice again at breakfast. He read the financial section of the newspaper with exaggerated calm. Savannah drank her coffee without comment. He folded the paper deliberately. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be," he said at last. "Preservation isn't accusation," Savannah replied. "It's distrust. It's protocol." He held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary. "You've always hidden behind protocol." Savannah tilted her head slightly. "And you've always preferred narrative." Patrick stood smoothing his jacket. "I have meetings?" "So do I," she said. He left first. Savannah waited exactly 10 minutes before leaving herself. At 9:30 a.m., Rebecca's retained forensic accounting team began formal review. Savannah joined the virtual session from her private office at Reeves Capital, not from home. 3 analysts appeared on screen, methodical, neutral, already reviewing the foundation's transaction logs under preservation order. "We'll reconstruct the full flow," the lead analyst said, "from restricted scholarship accounts to Horizon Ridge and beyond." Savannah nodded. "Assume intent until disproven," she said quietly. "But document only what's verifiable." "Understood." They began mapping. Transfer 1 routed to Horizon Ridge. Partial transfer to Caldwell Development Holdings. Secondary distribution to a real estate escrow account. Transfer 2 similar patterns staggered. Transfer 3 minor variation, but same destination node. Transfer 4 completed the previous day. The analyst paused. There's a 5th transaction draft in preparation, he said. Scheduled, but not yet executed. Savannah's eyes sharpened slightly. Date Friday. Today was Wednesday. Can it proceed under preservation? She asked. If executed, it will be logged, the analyst replied. But the movement post-notice increases exposure. Savannah nodded. Continue monitoring. By mid-morning, Patrick was at the estate in Connecticut. Savannah returned there as Lena Carter. She needed to see his posture in person. The estate air felt tighter than usual. Madison stood near the driveway, speaking urgently into her phone. No, we can't delete anything. It's under hold, she whispered. Yes, I understand. Savannah trimmed hedges within earshot. Madison ended the call and nearly collided with her. Watch where you're standing, she snapped. Savannah stepped back without argument. Yes, ma'am. Inside the house, raised voices echoed faintly from the study. Savannah moved along the greenhouse wall, positioning herself near the partially open window. You can't push the 5th transfer now, Vanessa was saying. I can, Patrick replied. There's no injunction. There's preservation. That doesn't freeze activity. It signals review. Patrick exhaled sharply. I won't let her corner me. Savannah noted the shift in language, from foundation to funds to her. Vanessa lowered her voice. This isn't about ego. It's about control, Patrick said. Silence followed. Vanessa responded carefully. You're losing it. Patrick's reply was immediate. I built this. Savannah's hand stilled against the greenhouse frame. Built this. The foundation had been capitalized by Savannah's liquidity strategies. But Patrick believed public presence equaled ownership. Inside, Vanessa continued. If you move money now, it looks retaliatory. It's operational. No, Vanessa said quietly. It's reactive. Savannah stepped away before the conversation deepened further. By noon, Ronald Pierce arrived, carrying 2 file boxes. His hands shook slightly. Savannah intercepted him near the service entrance. Are those for the forensic team? She asked softly. He froze. How do you paper trail surface? She replied. Ronald swallowed. I never intended intent as measurable, she said. His shoulders sagged. They told me it was temporary. And now? He looked toward the study window. I don't know what it is anymore. Savannah met his eyes calmly. Truth stabilizes, she said. He hesitated. If I cooperate fully. You protect yourself, she answered. He nodded faintly and continued inside. Savannah watched him go. Fear was no longer theoretical. It was personal. At 1:45 p.m., Savannah's phone vibrated. Rebecca. They've attempted to access donor communication archives outside normal channels, she said without greeting. Delete, Savannah asked. Access logs show search patterns. Not deletion yet. Savannah's gaze shifted toward the study. He's looking for vulnerabilities, she said. Yes. Send a reminder of preservation obligations, Savannah replied. Rebecca paused. You understand that escalates tension. It documents awareness. Rebecca did not argue. Inside the house, Patrick's voice rose again. She's weaponizing process, he said. Vanessa's tone cooled. She's using it. Patrick's footsteps crossed the study floor rapidly. You think she doesn't know, Vanessa answered after a pause. She knows enough. Savannah walked slowly toward the koi pond, appearing occupied. Control was slipping from Patrick's hands, not because she shouted, but because the structure was now visible. Mid-afternoon, Eleanor Whitaker arrived again. This time, she did not request entry. She entered. Through the window, Savannah saw her place a thick binder on Patrick's desk. Independent forensic review has begun, Eleanor said calmly. Patrick's expression tightened. You initiated that I supported it, he exhaled slowly. You're undermining leadership. No, Eleanor replied evenly. I'm protecting the foundation. Landana. Savannah watched Patrick's posture shift defensive now, not commanding. "This is unnecessary," he insisted. "Transparency removes necessity," Eleanor said. Vanessa remained silent in the corner. Her eyes moved between them carefully. Savannah stepped back from the window. The board was no longer passive. Procedure had activated multiple layers. At 4:10 p.m., Daniel Cho sent another message. Draft 5th transfer still pending. No execution yet. Savannah typed "Continue observation." She did not block it. Not yet. That evening at home, Patrick did not attempt casual conversation. He entered the kitchen, loosened his tie, and poured himself a drink without asking Savannah if she wanted one. "You've made your point," he said flatly. "I haven't made any statements," she replied. "You triggered forensic review." "Yes, you could have spoken to me." "I did. When I asked about Horizon Ridge." Patrick's jaw tightened. That was consulting. For restricted scholarships, it was temporary. She met his gaze calmly. "And the trust amendment," he stiffened. "You've been digging. I've been reviewing documents I signed." He set his glass down harder than necessary. "You're overreacting." Savannah stood. "If everything is compliant, review confirms it. And if it's not," he demanded, "then it corrects it." He stared at her. "You think you're morally superior?" "No," she said evenly. "I think records matter." He stepped closer. "You're destabilizing us." Savannah did not retreat. "You destabilized it when you moved restricted funds." Silence filled the kitchen. He had no immediate answer, because she had not accused. She had described. Patrick looked away first. "I won't let you destroy what we built," he said quietly. Savannah's voice remained calm. "I'm protecting what I built." He left the room without another word. Upstairs, a door closed firmly. Savannah remained standing in the quiet kitchen. She did not feel triumph. She felt confirmation. He was no longer certain. He was defensive. In her office, she updated the ledger. Board engaged. Forensic review active. 5th transfer pending. Subject reactive unstable in tone. She paused before writing one final line, momentum irreversible. Savannah closed the book gently. Patrick believed the conflict had begun. He did not understand. It had begun the moment he assumed she would never look closely. By Thursday morning, the foundation no longer felt like Patrick's stage. It felt like a ledger. Savannah arrived at Reeves' capital early, not to intervene, but to observe the unfolding reconstruction in real time. The forensic accounting team had worked through the night, mapping transaction paths beyond the obvious nodes. At 7:12 a.m., the lead analyst shared a screen. "We've identified layered routing," he said. Horizon Ridge received restricted funds. Within 48 hours, 80% was transferred to Caldwell Development Holdings. From there, funds moved into a real estate escrow tied to a mixed-use waterfront project. Savannah studied the flow chart silently. "Ownership structure?" she asked. "Indirect," the analyst replied. "Caldwell Development is managed by a holding entity. The beneficial ownership traces to a private trust." "Whose trust?" The analyst hesitated slightly. "Patrick Reeves is listed as a discretionary beneficiary." Savannah did not move. Not surprise, not anger, just alignment. "And Vanessa Cole?" she asked. "She's listed as operational signatory on Horizon Ridge." Savannah folded her hands loosely on the table. "And the escrow property acquisition scheduled for next week." Savannah nodded once. "Continue." The analyst clicked to the next slide. "There's more." An audio file appeared in the shared folder. "Voicemail," the analyst explained. "Recovered through Foundation device preservation. Sent from Patrick's secondary phone to Vanessa 3 nights ago." Savannah met Rebecca's eyes across the table. Rebecca gave a slight nod. The analyst pressed play. Patrick's voice filled the room, clear, controlled, unaware it would ever be replayed in a forensic setting. "Move the remainder before Savannah sees the books. If she questions liquidity, we accelerate the trust clause. Don't wait for board review." The recording ended. Silence held. Savannah did not close her eyes. She did not exhale sharply. She only asked timestamp Tuesday 10:42 p.m. after the litigation hold. Rebecca spoke carefully. That establishes knowledge and intent post-preservation. Savannah nodded. Chain of custody secure? Yes. Savannah leaned back slightly. Proceed. The analyst switched to a final document. We also uncovered trust amendment documentation tied to a private medical assessment consultation. Savannah's gaze sharpened. Explain. An inquiry was sent from Patrick's personal counsel to a medical evaluation firm regarding executive capacity assessment procedures. Rebecca's pen stilled. Preliminary exploratory, the analyst said, but documented. Savannah felt the structure settle fully into place. Diversion of restricted funds, conversion into private development. Contingency to declare her incapacitated. Not theory, not suspicion, documented preparation. She stood slowly. Prepare formal summary, she said. Rebecca watched her carefully. You're composed, Rebecca observed. I'm precise, Savannah replied. By late morning, Savannah returned to the estate as Lena Carter one final time that week. The air felt brittle. Madison's posture was sharp and restless. Ronald avoided everyone. Vanessa arrived before noon, expression tighter than usual. Savannah positioned herself near the greenhouse again. Inside, Patrick paced. They don't have context, he said sharply. They have a voicemail, Vanessa replied. Patrick froze. How do you, Madison told me? Preservation includes device records. Patrick ran a hand through his hair. It was hypothetical. It was directive, Vanessa said. It doesn't prove misuse. It proves intent, she answered. Savannah noted the change in Vanessa's tone. Less partner, more self-protective. Patrick stopped pacing. We can argue liquidity management. Not with beneficiary linkage to Caldwell, Vanessa said quietly. He stared at her. You're distancing yourself. I'm assessing exposure. He laughed once, humorless. You were fine when funds moved. I didn't anticipate litigation hold. Savannah stepped back from the window. Exposure was no longer abstract. It had weight. At 1:05 p.m., Ronald approached her near the service path. His voice trembled. They found the voicemail. Yes, Savannah replied calmly. He stared at her. You knew. I suspected. He swallowed. I can't lose my license. Then don't lie, she said. He looked toward the house. If I testify, you protect yourself. Ronald nodded faintly. I never wanted this. Then correct it, Savannah answered. He walked toward his car with slow, deliberate steps. Inside the house, Patrick's tone shifted. We freeze the fifth transfer, he said abruptly. Vanessa nodded once. Too late for optics. We can still frame narrative. You can try, she replied. Savannah returned to the greenhouse and wrote in her notebook, voicemail recovered. Beneficiary link confirmed. Medical assessment inquiry documented. Fifth transfer paused. She closed the notebook slowly. The structure had crystallized. By late afternoon, Rebecca called. We're preparing motion for temporary asset freeze tied to restricted funds and associated development accounts, she said. Savannah nodded. Include the voicemail transcript. Yes. And the trust amendment inquiry. Yes. Rebecca paused. This escalates publicly. Savannah met her reflection in the greenhouse glass. Precision requires exposure. Rebecca did not argue. That evening at home, Patrick did not attempt civility. He entered the study and closed the door immediately. Savannah heard the muffled rise of his voice through the wall. It's disproportionate, he was saying. She's overreaching. Pause. No, I won't settle. Pause. I won't be humiliated. Savannah remained at the dining table reviewing the forensic summary. Humiliation had never been her objective. Documentation had. Patrick emerged later, face pale beneath controlled composure. You've crossed a line, he said. I preserved one, Savannah replied. You're destroying everything. No, she said evenly. You jeopardized it. He stepped closer. You think you're untouchable. I think records matter. His voice lowered dangerously. You're making this adversarial. Savannah held his gaze. It became adversarial when you diverted scholarships. Silence. He looked at her as if searching for weakness. He found none. You don't even seem angry, he said. I don't need to be. He shook his head slowly. You've changed. Savannah's voice remained steady. No, I've reviewed. Patrick turned away. Upstairs, a door shut again. Savannah sat alone into the quiet house. She opened her ledger and transcribed the day's confirmations. Voicemail establishes intent. Beneficiary linkage confirmed. Trust clause preparation documented. Fifth transfer paused. She paused before adding one final line, evidence complete. Savannah closed the book. She felt no triumph, only clarity. Patrick believed escalation meant conflict. He still misunderstood. Escalation meant illumination. And illumination, once achieved, does not dim simply because someone wishes it to. By Friday morning, silence had hardened into strategy. Savannah did not return to the estate. She remained in Boston, where decisions were drafted in language rather than raised voices. At 8:00 a.m., Rebecca Sloan's office filed an emergency motion in Massachusetts Superior Court requesting a temporary freeze on assets directly traceable to restricted scholarship funds. The filing was narrow, carefully limited to documented transfers and associated development accounts. It did not accuse beyond what could be proven. Attached exhibits included transaction flow charts from Foundation to Horizon Ridge to Caldwell Development Holdings. The recovered voicemail transcript. Documentation of the trust amendment inquiry tied to executive capacity evaluation. No adjectives, only structure. By 9:17 a.m., Patrick received notice. Savannah knew the exact time because Madison's name appeared on a call log forwarded to Rebecca's litigation team. Emergency motion. Patrick's voice carried sharp disbelief over the speakerphone recording provided through lawful discovery monitoring. Rebecca had anticipated resistance. They'll argue overreach, she said calmly during a call with Savannah. I expect that Savannah replied. They may counter with claims of operational necessity. Let them. Rebecca paused. They may also initiate reputational defense. Savannah understood what that meant. Public relations, narrative framing, character questioning. Proceed, Savannah said. At 10:40 a.m., Daniel Cho sent confirmation that the fifth transfer had been formally canceled. Internal reversal initiated, he wrote, pending judicial review. Patrick had chosen retreat, not accountability. Retreat. Meanwhile, at the estate, Vanessa arrived earlier than usual. Savannah did not need to be present to visualize the room. The study doors closed, voices rose. You told me this was manageable, Vanessa said sharply. It was, Patrick replied. Until she escalated. She escalated because you accelerated. Patrick's tone darkened. You were complicit. Vanessa did not deny it. I agreed to strategic reallocation, she said, not asset freeze. Patrick exhaled sharply. This is temporary. No, Vanessa replied. This is exposure. The distance between them widened visibly now, not physically, but strategically. Complicity erodes quickly under scrutiny. At noon, Eleanor Whitaker formally notified the Foundation Board of the pending court motion. An emergency board session was scheduled for that afternoon. Savannah did not attend in person. She joined via secure video link camera on posture steady. Board members filled the screen, some uneasy, some resolute. Eleanor spoke first. Evidence indicates restricted scholarship funds were diverted into non-foundation development holdings, she said calmly. Independent forensic confirmation supports this. Patrick appeared on screen shortly after. His expression was controlled, but tension lined his jaw. This is premature, he said. Liquidity management was misinterpreted. Savannah did not interrupt. Board member Collins leaned forward. The voicemail transcript references acceleration before review. Patrick's eyes flicked briefly toward Savannah's square on the screen. That message lacks context, he replied. Eleanor responded evenly. Context can be provided under oath. Silence settled across the call. Savannah observed without commentary. Patrick turned slightly toward the camera. Savannah, you know we discussed temporary adjustments. She met his gaze. I asked about Horizon Ridge, she said calmly. You described consulting. That was accurate. For restricted scholarships, Patrick hesitated. It was operational. Savannah did not raise her voice. Then documentation will confirm that. Board member Alvarez spoke next. The trust amendment inquiry is also concerning. Patrick stiffened. That was precautionary. Precaution against what Eleanor asked quietly. Patrick did not answer immediately. Savannah felt the shift again. Control eroding not through accusation, but through record. The board voted unanimously to support judicial review and to cooperate fully with the asset freeze request. Patrick's camera feed flickered briefly as he disconnected before the call formally ended. Savannah remained seated until the final board member logged off. Only then did she close her laptop. She did not exhale heavily. She did not lean back in exhaustion. She simply stood and walked to the window overlooking the harbor. Water moved steadily below. By late afternoon, Rebecca called again. The judge granted temporary freeze pending hearing next week, she said. Savannah nodded once. Scope restricted funds and development accounts directly traceable. Good. Rebecca paused. He'll respond aggressively. I expect that. And he did. At 6:12 p.m., Patrick arrived home earlier than usual. He did not remove his jacket. He entered the kitchen where Savannah stood preparing tea. You blindsided me, he said flatly. I initiated procedure, she replied. You froze assets, restricted assets. They were operational. They were scholarships. His jaw tightened. You're humiliating me. Savannah met his eye steadily. You humiliated yourself. He stepped closer. You're enjoying this. No, she said calmly. I'm documenting it. Patrick laughed once short-strained. You've turned into a prosecutor. I've turned into a fiduciary. He stared at her, searching for anger. He found none. You're destroying our marriage, he said quietly. Savannah's voice remained level. Our marriage destabilized when you drafted a capacity evaluation contingency. He flinched. That was precaution. Against what? He did not answer. Silence thickened between them. Patrick's shoulders sagged slightly for the first time. You could have spoken to me, he said. I did. When I asked about transparency. He looked away. Upstairs, his phone began vibrating repeatedly. Vanessa's name illuminated the screen. He ignored it. Savannah turned off the stove. I won't engage in narrative, she said quietly. The hearing will address structure. Patrick studied her one final time. You're cold. Savannah's expression did not shift. No, she said. I'm clear. He walked past her without another word. Later that night, Savannah sat alone in her office. She opened her ledger. Emergency motion filed. Temporary freeze granted. Board support unanimous. Subject reactive reputation focused. She paused before writing the final line for the day structure now public. Savannah closed the book. She felt no triumph, no vindication, only inevitability settling into place. Patrick believed escalation was personal. He still did not understand. It was procedural. And procedure, once activated, moves with a rhythm no volume can interrupt. The hearing was scheduled for Tuesday at 9:00 a.m. Between Friday's temporary asset freeze and Tuesday's court appearance, the atmosphere in both the foundation and the Reeves household shifted from tension to containment. Patrick did not shout anymore. He strategized. Savannah did not withdraw. She documented. On Saturday morning, Rebecca Sloan met Savannah in her office to prepare. The opposing counsel will argue liquidity management discretionary authority and marital dispute escalation, Rebecca said, organizing binders into neat stacks. Savannah nodded. They'll frame this as internal disagreement. Yes, Rebecca replied, which is why we stay with the structure. Savannah reviewed the index tabs, Exhibit A restricted scholarship agreements, Exhibit B transfer flow charts, Exhibit C voicemail transcript and audio authentication, Exhibit D trust amendment and capacity evaluation inquiry, Exhibit E board resolution supporting judicial review. No rhetoric, only sequence. Rebecca looked up. He may attempt to portray you as unstable or vindictive. Savannah's expression did not change. That narrative requires evidence, she said. Not always, Rebecca replied quietly. But the court requires it. Savannah closed the binder. Then we give the court structure. By Monday afternoon, Patrick had retained separate litigation counsel. Savannah learned this not through confrontation, but through formal notice. The letter arrived with clinical phrasing. Allegations of fiduciary breach are disputed. Temporary transfers were lawful and within executive discretion. Savannah read it once and placed it in her folder. Patrick entered her office doorway shortly after. "You're enjoying this," he said flatly. "No," Savannah replied. "I'm finishing it. You could withdraw the motion." "I won't." His jaw tightened. "You're escalating into divorce territory." Savannah met his gaze calmly. "You drafted capacity contingency. That was protective." For whom he did not answer. Instead, he shifted tactics. "You've changed," he said. "No," she replied. "I've reviewed documentation." Patrick stepped fully into the room. "You're dismantling everything we built." Savannah's voice remained steady. "You leveraged restricted scholarships to finance private development. It was temporary. You left a voicemail instructing acceleration before review." He flinched. "That recording lacks context. The court will evaluate context." Silence filled the room. He studied her carefully. "You're not even angry." "I don't need to be." He exhaled sharply. "You think you're morally superior." "No," she said evenly. "I think records matter." Patrick turned and left without another word. Savannah returned to her preparation. On Tuesday morning, the courthouse felt smaller than the estate. Less ornamental, more precise. Savannah entered with Rebecca at 8:45 a.m., wearing a charcoal suit, hair tied back neatly. Patrick stood across the corridor with his counsel. Vanessa was not present. Ronald Pierce sat alone on a bench, pale but resolute. Eleanor Whitaker arrived shortly after, nodding once toward Savannah. No smiles, no theatrics. At 9:02 a.m., the courtroom doors opened. The hearing began. Judge Merrick presided, a methodical jurist known for intolerance of theatrics. Rebecca presented first. "Your Honor," she began, "this motion seeks temporary freeze of assets directly traceable to restricted scholarship funds diverted into non-foundation development holdings." She moved through the exhibits calmly. Transfer flow charts displayed on monitors. Scholarship agreements highlighting donor restrictions. Then the voicemail transcript. Judge Merrick leaned forward slightly. "Play the recording," he instructed. The audio filled the courtroom. Patrick's voice sounded more distant now, stripped of confidence. "Move the remainder before Savannah sees the books. If she questions liquidity, we accelerate the trust clause." Silence followed. Patrick's counsel rose immediately. "Contextual discussion." "Your Honor, operational strategy." Judge Merrick raised a hand. "The court will determine context," Rebecca continued. "We also submit evidence of preparatory inquiry into executive capacity evaluation under trust amendment language." Patrick's counsel objected. "Speculative." Rebecca responded evenly. "Documented inquiry, Your Honor. Exhibit D." The judge reviewed the page briefly. Objection overruled for purposes of preliminary review. Patrick remained composed outwardly, but his jaw tightened visibly. His counsel shifted approach. "Your Honor, temporary liquidity adjustments within executive discretion are common." "Funds were not permanently diverted," Rebecca replied calmly. "Then why route through a private development holding entity listing Mr. Reeves as discretionary beneficiary silence?" Patrick's counsel hesitated. "Beneficiary status does not equate to misuse," Judge Merrick interjected. "It does raise concern," Rebecca concluded. "Your Honor, the pattern, the timing post-preservation notice, and the recorded instruction establish intent beyond routine liquidity management." Patrick's counsel attempted one final pivot. "This is a marital dispute elevated into fiduciary litigation." Savannah finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, controlled. "This is a restricted scholarship fund." Judge Merrick looked directly at her. Mrs. Reeves, are you asserting personal grievance? No, she replied. I am asserting donor intent. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Merrick reviewed his notes. Temporary freeze remains in effect pending full evidentiary hearing, he said at last. Foundation operations unrelated to restricted accounts may continue under board oversight. Patrick's shoulders stiffened. This was not exoneration. It was containment. The hearing adjourned. Outside the courtroom, Patrick approached Savannah. You've embarrassed me, he said quietly. You embarrassed yourself, she replied evenly. You think this ends well. It ends documented. His eyes searched her face for hesitation. He found none. Ronald approached cautiously. I've agreed to cooperate fully, he said softly. Savannah nodded. That's appropriate. Eleanor joined them briefly. The board will initiate independent leadership review, she said. Patrick stiffened. You're overreacting. Eleanor's gaze remained steady. No, she said. We're stabilizing. Patrick turned away sharply and walked down the corridor without another word. Savannah watched him go. There was no triumph in her expression, only clarity. Later that afternoon, Rebecca called. He'll likely counterfile for marital dissolution leverage, she said. I expect that, Savannah replied. Are you prepared, yes? Savannah returned home before Patrick that evening. The house felt quieter, less like a shared structure, more like divided territory. She walked through each room once, not sentimentally, but observationally. The architecture remained unchanged. The foundation beneath it had shifted. Patrick entered an hour later. He did not speak immediately. He removed his jacket and placed it carefully over a chair. They're questioning my leadership, he said finally. They're reviewing it, Savannah corrected. You orchestrated this. I initiated preservation. He laughed once hollow. You're relentless. Savannah met his gaze calmly. I'm consistent. Silence stretched between them. Patrick's voice lowered. If this becomes divorce, it already became breach, she said quietly. He stared at her. For the first time, uncertainty outweighed anger in his expression. You're not the woman I married, he said. Savannah's voice remained steady. I am exactly that woman. He had simply stopped listening. He turned and walked upstairs. Savannah remained in the living room, standing still. No raised voices, no shattered glass, just structure revealing itself. She opened her ledger one final time that night. Temporary freeze upheld. Court acknowledged concern. Board initiating leadership review. Subject destabilized. She paused before writing the final line of the day, control transferred. Savannah closed the book gently. The legal process had begun publicly. Patrick believed this was the climax. He was mistaken. Clarity had only just entered the record. The week after the preliminary hearing did not erupt. It constricted. Patrick stopped attempting persuasion. He stopped invoking narrative. He shifted instead toward damage control meetings with counsel quiet calls to board members, subtle inquiries about public perception. Savannah observed the change the way she observed balance sheets, without commentary. The full evidentiary hearing was scheduled for the following Thursday. Between now and then, sworn depositions would begin. On Monday morning, Ronald Pierce sat across from Rebecca Sloan in a neutral conference room, legal recorder active. Savannah did not attend. She did not need to. Ronald's testimony was precise. Yes, he said under oath, hands folded tightly. I authorized transfers from restricted scholarship accounts to Horizon Ridge Consulting, under whose instruction, Rebecca asked, Patrick Reeves. Were you informed that funds would be temporarily reallocated and restored? As were they restored? None. Nor silence filled the room briefly. Were you aware Horizon Ridge funds would be routed to Caldwell Development Holdings? Ronald swallowed. Not initially. When did you become aware? After the third transfer. And did you object? Yes. What was the response that it was within executive discretion? Ronald's voice trembled only once. He steadied it quickly. I should have escalated sooner. Rebecca did not soften. Why didn't you? I believed it was temporary. Belief had been the architecture of his compliance. Now it was testimony. Later that afternoon, Vanessa Cole's deposition began. She arrived composed, tailored, careful. Rebecca's tone remained even. "Miss Cole, what was your role in Horizon Ridge Consulting managing member? Did Horizon Ridge receive funds originating from the Reeves Foundation and scholarship accounts?" "Yes." "For what purpose, strategic consulting? Did Horizon Ridge route funds to Caldwell Development Holdings?" "Yes." "Were you aware Patrick Reeves was a discretionary beneficiary of that development entity?" Vanessa hesitated briefly. "Yes." "Did you discuss accelerating transfers after litigation hold was issued?" Vanessa's jaw tightened. There were conversations regarding what operational adjustments. Rebecca placed a printed transcript on the table. "Is this your voice confirming acceleration before review?" Vanessa read silently. "Yes." Silence lingered. "Did you ever advise Patrick Reeves against moving funds post-preservation?" "Yes." "When the day after the litigation hold?" Vanessa did not look at Savannah when she exited. Distance had replaced alliance. On Wednesday evening, Patrick approached Savannah in the living room. "You've turned them all," he said quietly. "I didn't turn anyone," she replied. "They spoke. They're protecting themselves. So am I." Patrick's eyes hardened. "You could end this. It ends in court," she said. He exhaled sharply. "You're dismantling my career. You dismantled donor trust." Silence followed. Patrick's voice dropped. "I can fix this." "How?" she asked calmly. He hesitated. "Reimburse the funds. Public clarification." Savannah held his gaze. Reimbursement does not erase intent. He looked away first. Thursday morning arrived without drama. The courtroom filled more densely than the first hearing. Board members sat behind Eleanor. Reporters occupied the back row, quiet but attentive. Savannah entered beside Rebecca. Patrick stood with his counsel posture rigid. The evidentiary phase began. Rebecca presented Ronald's deposition excerpts first. Judge Merrick listened without interruption. Then Vanessa's statements. Then the forensic flow diagrams now expanded to include escrow documentation and beneficiary structure. Patrick's counsel attempted to reframe. "Temporary liquidity adjustments," he repeated. "No permanent deprivation," Rebecca responded calmly. "Intent to convert restricted funds for personal development interest is sufficient." The judge turned toward Patrick. "Mr. Reeves, do you dispute beneficiary status within Caldwell Development Holdings?" Patrick stood. "I am a discretionary beneficiary through a holding trust. Do you dispute that restricted scholarship funds were routed through Horizon Ridge into Caldwell Development Escrow?" Patrick paused. "The funds were temporarily reallocated." "Answer the question." "No." Silence deepened. "Do you dispute the authenticity of the voicemail recording?" Patrick's jaw tightened. "No." "Do you dispute discussing acceleration before review?" He inhaled slowly. "No." Judge Merrick leaned back. "Then the court is not evaluating misunderstanding. It is evaluating judgment." Patrick's counsel objected softly, but the judge continued. "Restricted funds carry legal obligation. Conversion into entities benefiting an executive, even temporarily, raises significant fiduciary breach." Rebecca remained still. Savannah did not move. Patrick attempted one final defense. "I intended restoration." Judge Merrick's voice remained steady. "Intent to restore does not negate unauthorized diversion." The gavel struck once. The temporary freeze converts to extended injunction pending full civil adjudication. Independent receiver appointed for restricted accounts. Leadership review recommended. Patrick's shoulders stiffened visibly. This was not merely containment. It was formalized oversight. Outside the courtroom, reporters approached cautiously. Savannah did not speak. She walked past microphones without expression. Patrick paused briefly when a journalist asked, "Do you regret the transfers?" He looked toward Savannah. She did not look back. "No comment," he said. That evening, the house felt hollow. Patrick entered last. He did not remove his jacket immediately. "They've appointed a receiver," he said quietly. "Yes, you've won." Savannah met his gaze. This wasn't a competition. He laughed once hollow. It feels like one. She shook her head slightly. It feels like documentation. He sank into a chair. They're reviewing my leadership. Yes, you've destroyed everything. Savannah's voice remained level. I preserved donor intent. Patrick stared at the floor. For what he asked quietly. For structure, she said. Silence stretched long between them. You could have handled this privately, he murmured. You drafted a contingency to declare me unstable. He closed his eyes briefly. That was precaution, for whom he had no answer left. Savannah stepped back slightly. I will file for divorce, she said calmly. The word did not tremble. Patrick looked up slowly. You're serious? Yes. He studied her face for anger. There was none. You're leaving, he said. Yes. After everything, after documentation. He did not argue further. He understood finally that persuasion had expired. Later that night, Savannah packed a single suitcase. Not dramatically, not angrily, methodically. She placed her ledger inside last. Downstairs, Patrick remained seated in the dim living room. He did not attempt to stop her. Savannah paused at the doorway. She did not deliver a speech. She did not recount evidence. She simply said, "The court will finalize proceedings." Then she left. No slammed doors, no raised voices, just footsteps receding across the threshold. Patrick remained seated long after the house settled into silence. For the first time, he understood control had not been taken from him. It had dissolved under record. And Savannah had never needed to shout to dismantle it. Savannah did not return to the house on Beacon Hill after she left. She moved into a furnished apartment overlooking the harbor, temporary, neutral, unadorned. The divorce filing was submitted the following morning. Grounds cited: breach of fiduciary duty, financial misconduct affecting marital assets, irreconcilable differences, no adjectives, no narrative. Patrick responded within 48 hours. His counsel framed it as strategic misjudgment, not malice. Savannah did not contest tone. She contested structure. Meanwhile, the independent receiver appointed by the court began reviewing foundation accounts in detail. Within 2 weeks, preliminary findings confirmed $386, $330 diverted from restricted scholarship funds. $308,000 routed into Caldwell Development Escrow. No documentation of donor authorization. Explicit executive approval documented via voicemail and internal correspondence. The board convened. Patrick was asked to step down as acting president pending civil adjudication. He resisted at first. Then he complied. Not because he agreed, because resistance now required contradiction of record. Savannah did not attend the meeting. She received Eleanor Whitaker's message afterward. It's done. Eleanor wrote, "We'll rebuild." Savannah replied simply, "Rebuild with transparency." The civil case proceeded quietly. Patrick's counsel attempted settlement, full reimbursement, confidential resolution, non-disparagement. Savannah considered it carefully. Then she declined confidentiality regarding financial correction. If donor trust was breached publicly, restoration must be public, she told Rebecca. Rebecca nodded once. Understood. The final settlement included full repayment of diverted funds with interest, Patrick's permanent resignation from foundation leadership, court-mandated governance reforms, disclosure to affected donors regarding misallocation and restoration. It was not theatrical. It was procedural. The divorce decree followed shortly after. Marital assets were divided according to prenuptial structure. Patrick retained personal holdings outside foundation entanglement. Savannah retained controlling interest in Reeves' capital. No alimony requested. No public statements issued. On the day the settlement finalized, Savannah returned once more not to the house, but to the foundation's main office. The building felt unchanged. Glass walls, neutral carpet, muted lighting. But leadership photographs had shifted. Patrick's portrait was removed from the main hallway. In its place, a temporary blank frame awaited replacement. Eleanor met Savannah in the conference room. "We've begun scholarship redistribution," Eleanor said. "Students weren't impacted directly. Funds were restored before tuition deadlines." Savannah nodded. "Good. Media inquiries are minimal," Eleanor added. "We've issued a compliance statement." Savannah walked toward the window overlooking the city. "This isn't about optics," she said quietly. "No," Eleanor agreed. "It's about precedent." Savannah turned back toward the room. Precedent matters. Before leaving, she asked to see the scholarship ledger, not because she doubted the receiver, but because she preferred confirmation. The numbers aligned, restricted funds restored, interest applied, allocation schedules intact. She closed the folder gently. Later that afternoon, Savannah drove to the Connecticut estate one final time. Not as Lena Carter, not in disguise. The gates opened automatically. Caleb Whitmore met her at the front steps, surprise visible but contained. "I wasn't expecting you," he said. "I won't stay long," she replied. She walked the grounds slowly. The koi pond reflected autumn light. The greenhouse stood as it always had. No torn documents now, no hidden conversations, just stillness. Savannah paused near the courtyard where Patrick had once corrected her in front of donors. The stone remained unchanged. Memory did not sting. It clarified. Patrick was no longer living there. He had relocated quietly to a smaller property outside the city. Reputation did not collapse publicly. It recalibrated privately. Savannah did not seek updates. She did not track his rebuilding. She had no interest in humiliation, only closure. Inside the estate foyer, she removed the small gardening gloves she had once used and placed them on the entry table. A quiet symbol. Then she turned and walked back outside. Before leaving, she took out her leather ledger one last time. She stood beside the pond and wrote, "Funds restored, leadership restructured, marriage dissolved, structure intact." She paused before adding a final line, "Dignity preserved." Savannah closed the book. The wind moved lightly across the water. No applause followed. No dramatic confrontation. Just equilibrium returning to place. That evening, she returned to her apartment overlooking the harbor. She unpacked the ledger and placed it in a drawer. Not hidden, not displayed, simply stored. Patrick sent one final message that night. "I never meant for it to go this far." Savannah read it once. She did not respond. Intent had already been measured. Documentation had already spoken. Outside her window, ships moved steadily across dark water. Slow, deliberate, unhurried. Savannah stood watching them until the lights dimmed across the harbor. There was no triumph in her expression, only stillness. She had not shouted. She had not retaliated publicly. She had not weaponized humiliation. She had followed structure. And structure, when respected, restores balance without spectacle. The estate would change hands eventually. The foundation would continue. Scholarships would be awarded under revised governance. Patrick would rebuild whatever remained of his reputation. Savannah would continue managing capital with the same discipline she always had. The difference was not victory. It was clarity. And clarity, once earned, does not fade. If this story stayed with you, take a moment. Not to celebrate downfall, but to reflect on what quiet strength looks like. Sometimes, justice is not loud. It does not shout. It does not humiliate. It documents. It waits. It proceeds. If you believe dignity matters more than spectacle, you're welcome to stay connected here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. There's something grounding about remembering that accountability is witnessed across time zones. And if stories about calm resilience and lawful justice resonate with you, you can subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Until the next story.